Do you love TV shows? We do too. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna, and we're the hosts of We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast hosted by us, a married couple with an endless love for TV.
Whether you're searching for a new favorite series or ready to revisit an old classic, we're here to guide you through an infinite world of TV shows.
Each episode, we watch and discuss the pilot for shows while also sharing personal stories that parallel the storyline.
So if you're tired of endlessly scrolling and not sure what to watch next, tune in and let us do the searching for you.
We Judge a Show by Its Pilot. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Your new favorite show is just one click away. Hello everyone, welcome back to our pod.
Hi.
Hey.
Sorry. It was just a hi, and then I was like, okay, I didn't have anything planned else to say.
Oh, okay, well.
What's up?
Nothing much. We just went and had some. You had your birthday. We're recording this on Monday the 21st. You had your birthday. Was on Friday.
Yes.
We went out to eat.
Yummy.
We went and saw Sinners, which was an amazing movie. It was filmed here in Louisiana, so That was fun. And then Saturday night we had a little party for you at our house where we had some friends come over, played some games, and hung out. Easter Sunday, we went to my mom's house, had some food, came back home, hung out in bed, I think, for the rest of the day.
Yep.
And then we went to dinner with my dad and my stepmom.
Yep. And now we're here.
Now we're here. Yeah. So have you had a good birthday, I guess, weekend?
Weekend, yes. It's been a great weekend. Thank you to everyone who helped me celebrate. I actually have one more dinner tomorrow with my AOPI littles, so we always celebrate our birthdays. They're about a month apart, so we always take each other out to have a nice meal, lunch or dinner. And so I'm meeting her tomorrow, my last celebration.
It's very nice.
And it's been a good birthday. Looking forward to what this year has in store.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I kind of had this random thought. A little bit random. It's not about Domingo. But we were, when we were driving home, I was kind of thinking about, so we've been rewatching season 1 of And Just Like That.
Yes.
Because we got the official release date for season 3. We're both really excited about it. I was the one that was like, I want to go back and rewatch season 1.
Okay.
So I didn't really remember a lot of it because it feels like, it was 2021. It feels so long ago, especially during the era that it was.
Ago.
Yeah. And I realized I didn't really go back and rewatch any of the episodes. So in season 1 of And Just Like That, Carrie is working as a podcast host.
Yes.
And it kind of got me thinking about like how podcasting is portrayed in movies and TV. And I was thinking about like, so in And Just Like That, Carrie is in like a professional studio podcast. They're at a desk. They're all kind of across from each other.
Howard Stern.
Right. Yeah. Like a very professional setting. But then there's this, I haven't seen it, but there's this movie on Netflix with Kristen Bell, with Kristen Bell and I believe Adam Brody, and she plays a podcast host. And I saw on the preview of it that it's like her and this other girl, and they're just like sitting side by side on a couch, just like holding microphones.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm like, okay, I guess people can podcast like that. And then that made me think of another Netflix movie with Jonah Hill where he plays a podcaster, and him and his co-host sit side by side to each other while they do their podcast. And we tried to do that when we did our first run of when we were trying to do the recording upstairs, sitting on the couch, sitting side by side, the episodes that no one's ever going to hear because they're deleted from the cloud. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I'm sure they do the side by side for like camera reasons.
Oh yeah.
But the idea of doing a full-time podcast with someone and sitting next to them the whole time, that sounds like a nightmare.
Well, I sort of feel like a big part of the pod of when you're doing it with someone is seeing their reactions and their emotions to what you're talking about. Because I feel like we don't video our pods.
Right.
So it might be because they're videoing them to go on to the YouTube or for the TV show. And so maybe it's to get that camera angle on both. But I feel like you and I bounce like our emotions off of each other, what we're asking, what we're replying, and being able to see you to me is really important.
Right.
So yeah.
I just find it really just the reality of doing a podcast with someone, doing a full-time podcast with someone like you, like what you and I do, even though this isn't technically a job, it is a full-time kind of gig. We are doing
it's a hobby. Yeah.
It is something that we do a lot in our free time. And the idea of you sitting right here next to me doing this podcast and us just having to like be like this the whole time, I would absolutely hate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in a different setting where you're being interviewed by one person, like let's say Oprah, and you're on the couch and y'all are having a conversation, to me is different than a podcast,
right? Where
that in essence works. But this for me, yes, I found it very awkward upstairs. Like I couldn't see you.
Yeah.
And I feel like being able to look at you, we get a lot from that, from each other. So I'm with you.
Yeah. It's just funny how when that first season of And Just Like That came out and up until, last year, I didn't know what a podcast was like, and I didn't know what recording a podcast would be like. But I very quickly found out that the side-by-side thing was not going to work for us, and sharing a microphone was not going to work for us, and we kind of had to figure that out. But yeah, so for anyone out there that does a podcast and you and your host sit side by side,
let us know.
Let us know what that's like.
Because we want to listen to
genuinely curious of, because every podcast that I watch that has video, like our friends at
what Eamon and Beck,
Delicious Recap,
Smoshcast.
Like they all, like, even though on Delicious Recap they're doing it Zoom, they're face to face, and on Smoshcast, they're face to face, and when they have a guest, they're kind of in the middle of the table, so they're all kind of able to look at each other. Yeah, I just want to know what it's like if you co-host a podcast and y'all sit side by side. Like, how does that work? I just want to know how that works.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's
very
a
interesting
weird
to me.
dynamic.
That feels very, not a nightmare. That's being very dramatic, but like that's just
it doesn't seem like it would work.
Doesn't seem
easily.
It doesn't seem like it would be easy to have an organic conversation like what we're having right now, looking at each other face to face, and what we do for every episode. I mean, we type out the series and episode information. I type out the pilot summary, and everything in between. We're just riffing it. So, I mean, and what we're doing right now, we're just riffing it.
I didn't know you were going to ask me
It's a lot of that. Well, it literally just popped in my head, like, while we were on our way home, while I was driving. All right, so that's done.
That's done.
That conversation's over with. No, so we are continuing Anna Month, even though your birthday has passed. We
got it.
Are still celebrating you, because every day is a celebration of Anna.
It is,
at least in my world. And
stop.
And we have kind of entered an era. So I'm kind of so even though the title of the show that we're doing today maybe would kind of parallel you and I getting married, but not necessarily us.
I call this home ownership time.
Yes, I call this when
I'm the Edie Britt of this.
Yes,
of this
you
series.
are. Okay.
I will not compare myself to Nicolette Sheridan. I'm just saying I was the single lady on the block.
I know.
For a long time.
You could say you were Terry Hatcher. Terry Hatcher was divorced.
Oh, well, I wasn't
was
divorced.
Single. I know, but
Edie was separate.
Oh, I know.
Edie was single.
But once you see how I described Edie, you're gonna once you see that, you're gonna be like, oh no, wait, I was just the single person that lived.
Gotcha.
She had been married multiple times. Her character had been married multiple times as well. So we're talking about Desperate Housewives, a show that you'll see kind of in the episode and series information. I had it down back in the early days when we had Jeff's favorite, Anna's favorite. It was on the list of the top shows.
Oh, okay.
And, because it was number one in the ratings, I think 2 years in a row, and or at least scripted wise. But yeah, so I had never. Did you watch it when it originally aired?
Oh,
Did you watch the whole thing?
I think I was on for a few seasons, and then I'm not sure why I fell off.
Yeah.
Maybe I just got tired of it. But I was a devoted watcher for many seasons.
Yeah, I dated someone a long time ago that watched the show and then didn't watch the final season. And then when Desperate Housewives was added to Netflix or Hulu or whatever, she was like, "Oh, I'm going to watch the final season." So I watched the final season of Desperate Housewives with zero knowledge of what was going on. So I have like no idea, honestly. Like I mean, it was also just it was also like a very long time ago. It was like 10 years ago. So I don't remember it all. But I mean, like, I just remember sitting here watching it being like, I bet this is a really good show. I have no idea what's going on, but I bet this is a really good show. So yeah, we're doing Desperate Housewives, and before we get into all of our other stuff, Anna's going to go ahead and give us some episode and series information.
All right, Desperate Housewives, the pilot. Desperate Housewives was an American mystery comedy drama that aired on ABC from October 3rd, 2004 to May 13th, 2012 for 8 seasons and 180 episodes. The series was created by Mark Cherry, who would go on to create similar shows like Devious Maids and Why Women Kill, which both have themes of murder, mystery, and dark comedic humor.
And it's a majority female cast.
Yeah, and I love Why Women Kill.
Oh, that was such a good show.
The pilot was also written by Cherry and was directed by Charles McDougall, who directed for other shows like The Office, Parks and Rec, and Big Love.
I never saw Big Love. That's the Bill Paxton show?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Amanda Seyfried?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I watched that. Ginny Goodwin, who she's in Why Women Kill, so Jennifer Goodwin. Oh, yeah. The series centers around the lives of the residents of Wisteria Lane, focusing on 4 housewives leading very different lives. The series' ongoing storyline was the mysterious suicide of Mary Alice Young, a seemingly perfect housewife, and the 4 main housewives trying to solve the mystery. The main cast includes Terry Hatcher as Susan Meyer, a recently divorced housewife, Felicity Huffman as Lynette Scavo, a housewife with 3 rowdy sons and a baby, and a husband that is always traveling, Marsha Cross as Bree Vandekamp, an ideal version of a traditional housewife, pearls and all, Eva Longoria as Gabrielle Solis, a former model turned housewife who is often neglected and mistreated by her workaholic husband. Nicolette Sheridan as Edie Britt, a recently divorced housewife for being Nicolette Sheridan as Edie Britt, a recently divorced housewife known for being a manhunter.
I almost wrote man-eater, but I was like, manhunter's a little nicer.
Stephen Culp as Rex Vandekamp, Bree's despondent husband, Ricardo Chavira as Carlos Solis, Gabrielle's unloving husband, Mark Moses as Paul Young, Mary Alice's peculiar husband, Andrea Bowen as Julie Mayer, Susan's bright teenage daughter, Jesse Metcalf as John Rowland, the Solis's gardener, Cody Cash as Zach Young, Paul and Mary Alice's son, James Denton as Mike Delfino, the newest addition to Wisteria Lane and the object of both Susan and Edie's affections, and Brenda Strong as Mary Alice Young, who serves as the show's narrator. The show became an instant hit and was one of the top 10 most watched shows on television for the first 5 seasons. The first 2 seasons being the most watched scripted series on TV at the time. The series was nominated for a total of 38 Primetime Emmys, winning 7 of them, including Outstanding Directing, Casting, and Lead Actress for Felicity Huffman. You can currently watch the entire series on Hulu, Disney Plus, Prime, and Prime Video. Oh, and by the way, Sisters is also back on Prime Video after that blip where they took it off for a week. They added it back.
Yeah, I decided to add that in because I noticed that.
I
was
noticed
like,
it, yeah.
It's back on Prime. That was so weird.
It was.
Because I wanted to go and watch some more episodes, and they were like, you have to pay for it. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And then, so just a weird, they took it off Prime Video for a week and then put it back on, and it's back on Prime Video. So go watch Sisters. All right.
Sisters.
So you had seen the show before. What did you think of the pilot, kind of rewatching it now?
I liked it. It was just a true setup of like the characters, their families, everyone on the block. And there was the mystery about the whole like suicide, the death and all of that. That to me, I always love a good murder, suicide mystery kind of intrigue.
Yeah.
Like, you felt like there was something else that was going on.
A lot of murder and a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, exactly. Like Michael Scott would say. So yeah, I just think it was, again, something that was on. I'm trying to think of
2004 to 12.
Yeah, again, I had just moved into my house. I'd been a year living in Seattle, so I was now part of a subdivision and a block.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like, I was
You're living it.
I was living that kind of life. So yeah, I liked it. It to me was very, I'll date myself per usual here. It was, to me, very reminiscent of a show like Knots Landing back in the day. Like the whole cul-de-sac, drama, all the neighbors that know everything about everyone on the cul-de-sac or on the block. And,
there's just always going to be something appealing about small town big secrets. Like there's always going to be that appeal, whether it's something very simple like Desperate Housewives or something very elaborate like Twin Peaks. Like you kind of have, I don't know if that's like the scale, but I mean, I would say Twin Peaks is pretty far out there, but it is about a small town or a small area, a lot of secrets, a lot of deceit, lying, affairs, stealing, arson in this episode.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'd never seen the pilot before, and I mean, I was immediately kind of drawn in because, one, I love the cast. I mean, like, this is like I sometimes wonder with some shows when they get the cast that they have, they just kind of the producers look at each other and they're like, well, we just hit a home run. I mean, like, there are just certain shows where it's like, y'all just couldn't have picked better. Y'all could not have picked better people to play these parts.
Well, and it's funny that I said Knots Landing because I think Nicolette Sheridan had been on Knots Landing.
Yeah.
And you knew Terry Hatcher had been on
Lois and
Clark, so you knew her.
Marsha Cross, Melrose Place.
Yeah. So
the famous reveal where she takes the wig off and she has the scar. That was the only thing about Melrose Place that I ever knew.
Yeah.
Never watching the show other than the SNL skit.
And so Doug Savant as well.
Oh, I know.
From Melrose Place. So there was a little connection there.
Lynette's horny ass husband. Mm-hmm. So was it kind of the murder mystery? Not murder, but was it kind of the mystery of it all that kind of hooked you in?
Yeah, and I felt like they were my peers in age at the time. I was in my mid-30s by then, so I mean, these were people I felt like could have been on my block. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like being? So you lived in the suburbs of Seattle.
Yes.
You were a homeowner.
Yes.
That was the first home that you owned?
Yep.
So what was life like in the suburbs of Seattle?
So I had lived in an apartment north of Seattle when I first moved there, and around 2003 I bought my first house, and it was in a very suburbia cookie cutter house neighborhood in South Seattle. Mm-hmm. And there was drama. Now, mind you, and kind of like Desperate Housewives, these were the days before the internet and Facebook and, the neighborhood watch app and all of those kind of things that we have today to keep up. So if you kind of wanted to know what was happening, you kind of had to actually walk outside of your house and talk to people.
Yeah.
And so I lived on a street, so it's kind of hard to describe. You've been there. We went by there when we went to Seattle. I lived on this little sort of side street that was a loop. Well, my house was on like the end of the street, and there was like a little bit of street on the side of my house, but it was the end of the sort of the loop. So I can't describe it very well, but I didn't have houses directly next to me. There was street, and then there were houses that faced the side of my house.
Okay.
Well, on two of those houses that faced my house were like, I'm going to make it up because I don't think, like, I never talked to these families, but I think between two of these houses, like 5 families lived in these houses. Like there was just constantly people there. Mm-hmm. They would have cars that were parked at the end of that little like street that blocked like I think like the fire hydrant, like they got notices from the city to like not park there. The people that lived next to me were pretty nice. They were a young couple. And then like 2 houses down was like the HOA president for our block. And so, I mean, it was pretty calm. We one day had an actual, someone who had been like stealing stuff out of people's cars. They got caught. I remember seeing like the HOA president running across the window of my living room. I remember seeing her, and like the police were there. They caught this guy who had been breaking into people's houses, and I had figured out he was probably the one who had like stolen all the stuff out of my car. One time I had come home, I think I had been like at UW or Seattle U or something one day, and I came home, and kind of like we do now, I had like 2 big planters on my porch. Probably Rebecca or my mom planted plants to try to decorate. And all I remember was my planters had been tipped over and there was like dirt everywhere. And I was just like, oh my God. I initially kept thinking like, oh God, some like random dog like got into my planters, knocked them over. But later, after that guy was caught, I was like, I bet he was looking for a house key. I bet he was like scoping out the place, trying to find a key, thinking I had planted. So just so you know, there are no keys hidden in the planters on our porch.
Watched a movie called Bagman last night.
Oh yeah.
And there was the whole thing with like they had the spare key under the Potter plant. I'm like, nope, don't do it.
We don't do that. So I remember that all happened. One day I was, I think, on a work trip, and my neighbor, my street was like at an angle, and I was like at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah.
And one day my neighbor either texted me or emailed me. I don't remember which one it was, because we didn't have like very good texting back in 2004 yet. No. If it was like where you had to like tap your number 3 times. Yeah, for each of your letters. And she was like, I don't know if you're home or not, but there is a cougar that is going up and down the hill of our backyards. Because
not an attractive older woman. You're talking about an animal.
An animal. Yes. I was in Washington State. Cougars were very much around.
Yeah.
But the way our backyard was like, because it came down a hill, each yard had a retaining wall for one side of your fence. So like literally cougars could bounce from yard to yard. And so people were like, stay inside. Cause like there were cougars. Like if you have animals, like bring them in. So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. I remember when we went up to Seattle, and, it was our first trip we ever took together. We did a whole Pacific Northwest trip. We've talked about it before on the pod. We were staying with one of your friends in Seattle, and he also lived in Kent?
Auburn.
You lived in Kent.
I lived in Kent.
Okay. And thinking about it now, sitting out on his back porch, I'm just like, I don't know if there was like a hill or a mountain or something like that. He was like, an animal could just leap from there and into someone's backyard.
Because they had
easily.
Like in like the fence, they had usually like a wall that would retain it, so it could easily just hop over from fence to fence. Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, what's crazy was back around 2004, because I moved in there around mid 2003 and then lived there for about 3 years. But back then it was really underdeveloped. I remember when we went back in 2017 that in those 10 years, like it had totally changed. Like there were just tons of houses and condominiums that were not there when I left. 'Cause that was the second time I had been back since leaving. So it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy.
So
you lived in that house in Seattle for a few years, and you came back down to Louisiana, where you purchased another home, the one that we are in right now.
Yes.
And so, but with this neighborhood, you were introduced to a Facebook an HOA Facebook page.
Yes.
Which I'm also a part of. And we've had some pretty crazy shit happen in this neighborhood over the years.
And some good things.
Oh yeah, of course. What are some, and this could also just be in Seattle too, just as it doesn't have to be exclusively here, but what are some crazy, like, incidences that you remember?
A lot of them to me that are crazy, that I will deem crazy, are the ones where people threaten other people. I'm like, you do realize we can see your name on this,
right?
Like, and we can look up your address, because there is like an actual, not via Facebook, but we have a community management like that lists all of our addresses and our names on it.
Right. You can also Google that very easily.
Correct. And so I'm just like, y'all are insane.
Yes.
Just some of them where they ask silly things that as a homeowner, that I think you should know. Like I'll give my mom and actually also my sister a lot of credit that they helped me become a homeowner. I mean, obviously my sister has been living in, a home, for many years, and as well as my mother when she was still around. There were things that you need to know about your home and what is your responsibility versus, like, a street light goes out on your block. Obviously you are not in charge of fixing that. When your fence gets blown down by a hurricane, that is your responsibility.
Right.
There are people that will post on the Facebook page, my fence blew down. Does the HOA fix that? And people will be like, no, that's your fence. And so those are the things that I'm just like, I don't know. I know that there's no like homeowner 101 class or something, and I know that there are various types of residences that are different, where like your mother lives in a gated community in somewhat like garden patio homes that are very small. Like literally your mother's gate is like a gate, like, an open and shut gate, where we have a whole fence perimeter, where her fence was sort of knocked off the hinges by a hurricane. Her HOA fixed it. Yeah. But that's written in their rules.
Right. It is more or less like she lives
in an apartment
complex. She has like a site manager and stuff.
Yes, exactly. And so
property manager.
Yes, exactly. So those are the things that like really surprised me. The ones where they talk about the animals and threaten animals kill me, because I'm just like, those are like the innocent things. Yeah. I'm like, they don't know like that they're not supposed to go to that yard, or they can't obviously control going to the bathroom. They just go to the bathroom where they can. And so, you just get a little frustrated by things like that, because you're just like, you're being unkind and mean to like something that's innocent versus like just trying to be like, whose dog is this? What can we do to like keep it in its fence? Or is it like a random roaming dog? Do we need to call animal control? The ones that threaten to me are the ones that I'm like, great, I have these crazy people in my neighborhood. Lots of stuff about the kids. I've seen people threaten kids. That to me is also very disturbing when you're talking about threatening an actual person. Yeah. I've seen lots of welcoming ones where people are like, yeah, we're just hanging on the driveway watching the LSU game. Come have a drink.
Yeah.
We're grilling. We've also done, I think it was a chili cook-off once.
I wasn't here for that.
No, it wasn't chili. It was, what was it that they cooked? Barbecue?
Maybe.
Or they grilled?
I don't.
They did in the park that we have, so that was nice. We have a pond where people fish. Yeah. It's crazy in its own way, but there are like the times that we've talked about where during a hurricane we couldn't get our generator started, and someone had posted they would come and help, and he did twice
in the middle of the hurricane.
Literally
in the middle of the hurricane.
In his I Know What You Did Last Summer slicker,
where I invited the killer into the house in a heartbeat, because I was like, I don't care who you are, come turn this generator on, because I don't know how.
And so we've had nice things like that happen. Our AC guy lives in the neighborhood, so it's a good thing as well.
The guy that replaced our roof.
The guy who replaced our roof, thank you to him as well after the latest Ida hurricane. But so there have been crazy things. We have like a pretty decent block here. One of the other crazy things that happened once on this block was because I used to have so many work promo items, way worse than I used to. That way worse then than I do now is what I meant. I used to park my car in the driveway, not in the garage, and someone was flying his like remote control helicopter around. Yeah. And it was like a really big helicopter, not like a little kid toy that you would get at Walmart or something. I mean, this thing was serious. And he lost control of it, and it slammed into my car and like literally dented my car.
Oh, wow.
His homeowner's insurance paid to have my car fixed. Nice. So that was good. I'm trying to think of what else. We've, it's been good. We're pretty quiet. I don't think we really know too much of the shenanigans other than what people put on Facebook.
Yeah, our street, I have to say, at least our half of the street, we've stayed pretty drama free. Yeah, I have to say it's been pretty drama free.
We know our neighbors, Shannon across the street and Eddie, and then our other neighbors that live next to us moved a couple of years ago. But I went to introduce myself to the new neighbors, but they're very quiet. They don't come out that much or see them. And then we have our other neighbors, Brandy and her husband. I think his family has been a little sick, like his mom or something, and her sister, so they don't say too much. But again, I mean, I will say the one thing about kind of living in this neighborhood, I think if we posted right now on Facebook, I'm being robbed, please come help me. Like there would be 15 people at the end of this block in about 5 minutes. Yeah. Like literally, I think maybe not 15, but there would be several at least driving by to see really if it was happening and if it was true, or at least calling 911 for us or something. Yeah. So.
Okay, so there isn't a homeowners 101. There isn't a homeowners. I'm sure somewhere in the world there's classes you can take on how to be a homeowner. But what was something about being a homeowner that you learned that you necessarily didn't know going into being a homeowner?
There is just a lot of shit that you need for your house. Yeah. I will say going from an apartment to a house when I moved from North Seattle down to my house in South Seattle, I was legitimately sick of going to Home Depot and Walmart. If within that like first week and a half of living in the house, if I had to go to Home Depot again, I was going to hurt someone. I was just like, oh my God, what else?
Yeah.
You need rakes. You need an indoor broom. You need an outdoor broom. You need
you need a leaf blower. You need a lawnmower.
You need the lawnmower. And I mean, that's a funny story that I can tell you about my house in Seattle in a second. You need a hose. You need a hose for the front. You need a hose for the back.
Yep.
You need like extension cords. You need lamps, extra lamps, because now you have this big space that you didn't have before, that one lamp isn't bright enough to light up the whole room. I mean, you need cleaning supplies out the yin yang, because, in an apartment you have 3 rooms, where in a house you now have 10. And just, paint. You need this to fix it up. It was like never ending. Yeah. So like when I lived in Seattle, a lot of people think it rains all the time. It does not. In fact, Louisiana actually gets more rain than Seattle does per capita, per whatever you measure rain by. But there was one summer in particular that we were in the middle of a major drought. And we were told not to use water to water our lawns, which in Seattle, you saw my house. My lawn was literally probably the size of this dining room table. Yeah. It was not big at all. Well, that summer, like everyone's lawns were turning brown because we were told not to water, and it was not even sprinkling. And so all of us had gotten letters from the HOA that we had to do something about our lawns, like resod it, put grass seeds on it, do something. And we're like, well, we can't, because we can't water the lawns. Yeah. And they weren't that big, but no one wanted to be seen watering, because again, we didn't want to be that person that was defying an actual city ordinance.
Everyone at like 2:00 in the morning secretly watering their lawn.
Right. And all of a sudden their lawn is just all perfect and green. How is this happening? So I went to Home Depot and I went to talk to the guy. Did
you lose your shit because you had to go to Home Depot?
I probably did. Well, I was losing my shit because I felt like everybody's lawns were brown.
Yeah.
Everybody's. And we were all like, can we just wait until it starts raining again? It's going to all be green in a few months, because everything just turns green in Seattle. It's called the Emerald City. So I went to Home Depot and I was like, man, is there something to help make your grass grow like really fast or turn it green? And he goes, there is like lawn paint.
Yep.
And I was like, what?
I'm sitting here. You've never told me this story. I've been sitting here this entire time being like, she went and got her lawn painted. I was like, you did, or you.
I did it myself. Yeah. So he got me everything. There was like whatever the paint it was, the like sprayer, like canister that was like a couple of feet high with the big nozzle on it. And so I was out in front of my yard, spray painting my yard, like grass green. I even had like little tiny shrubs. God, I wish I had a picture of the shrubs. So like, I decided I'm going to just kind of like I do here. I go in at the beginning of a season and just attack and get them really small so that I don't have to deal with them for like 2 months. And so I made like little topiaries out of each of my shrubs. They were like little balls. And so I painted those green, and my whole lawn was like perfectly grass green. Yeah. Like 2 or 3 of the guy neighbors that lived like in my little loop came over and they were like, can we look at your paint and see what brand it is? Because they had all gotten letters too. They were like, you're going to be fine. We're going to put a lien on your house. So
that's so annoying.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, literally like 10 or 15 neighbors had all started painting their lawns. And so we all had our lawns that were green.
Yeah, I didn't fully know about the lawn paint until it's mentioned in the pilot episode of Glee, where they do a flashback to when Finn's mom was dating a lawn painter, and it was like, during certain times of the year, it just won't rain. I don't know if that's specifically something also that happens in the Midwest, because Glee took place in Ohio, but that was the first time I'd ever heard of lawn paint. And then I remember looking it up, being like, people have like lawn painting businesses. Yeah. I was like, I didn't even. Well, it's very specific areas of the country, or probably the world, but in the United States, it's in very specific areas of the country where these companies exist.
Yeah. Well, we had gotten a notice when we had the pool done that on the side of our yard, that were the trucks that were like digging and then laying the cement and all of that stuff for the pool had kept going in and out. Like they had destroyed the lawn on that side. And I remember Summer was like, you can paint it. And I was like, oh yeah, I know I can paint. I said, but the difference is there was no lawn on our side. Like it had just been destroyed. It was just dirt. So at that time, I wrote the HOA and was like, look, we just had a pool built. It's freaking like November at this point. I was like, nothing's going to grow in South Louisiana in the dead of winter, because, it's just not. I said, in January or February, I'm going to throw some seeds onto the ground. And once it starts raining in March and April, the grass will grow back. Because in Louisiana, you can't just go and buy like 3 squares of sod. You have to buy like a pallet, which is like $1,000. I was like, I'm not going to go spend $1,000 when I know I can just fling like some seeds. That was
the little pusher thing that spreads the seeds. That's what I remember. I have a very clear memory of doing that.
Yeah, so we went and threw seeds, and the grass has since grown back, so it looks all beautiful. But I remember Summer was like, you can paint. I'm like, oh, I know I can paint. I've done it.
We would just be painting dirt.
We would be, right, exactly. Yeah. There was just dirt, where in Seattle, I had grass. It was just brown. It was dead. So, So those are just some of my neighborhood stories, but I'll never forget those men walking over going, what is it that you're doing? And I was like, oh, it's like actual lawn paint.
Yeah.
And they were like writing it down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't have camera phones back in the day. They wrote down the name and I was like, oh, just go to Home Depot. Some guy in the lawn department will show you where it is.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
But then everyone all started having green painted lawns for a little while in Kent, Washington. So that was pretty funny.
Well, fun. Well, that's what it's like being a homeowner. I wouldn't know. I mean, I've never officially owned a home. I moved in here. This is our home, but
Yes.
Kind of the differences between, I got very used to anytime I had a problem, just calling the landlord and just calling the office and just being like, I'm having this issue with the garbage disposal. They're like, all right, we'll have someone come out there in like 30 minutes. Within 30 minutes, there was someone. They'd fix it, be like, all right, see you later. And that was it.
And those were the things I had to remind you about when you moved in. And I mean, it's a learning lesson.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying is, I mean, I'll never forget living in the apartment when I first lived in Seattle. This was really kind of stupid, but like, I had a washer and a dryer and they were in like a closet that had like the bifold door. Mm-hmm. So you opened them and I had actually laid my ironing board on top of them because my apartment was pretty small. So I didn't have a lot of space to like just have an ironing board out. So my ironing board was on top of my washer and my dryer. Both were front loading. And I just remember my dryer stopped drying. And I was like, so I called the landlord and he came over to look to see like if he could figure it out. And then he looked on, my dryer and he goes, have you ever changed the air filter? And I was like, is there an air filter? And I knew there was one because I had a dryer in my apartment in Monroe, but I hadn't remembered the air filter because I had it covered with my ironing board. He pulled out the air filter. I swear to gosh, y'all, it was like 2 to 3 inches thick of lint on that on that filter. As soon as he peeled, he was like, it was like a little blanket. I mean, it was just hilarious. He was like, you have got to clean this. And I was like, I know, I have it covered. So I just totally, but I had not cleaned it from like the time I moved in until like maybe 6 or 7, 9 months later. And all of a sudden it stopped and it was because the air filter was so clogged. I was just like, so even living in an apartment, you just get used to going, I need help. I need a light bulb because like my apartment complex in Seattle, like they would change light bulbs. They would give us our new air conditioning filter. They would like plumbing issues. Yeah. Anything you needed, you could just call them. And it's not that way in your house.
Nope.
You have to fix it all and pay for it.
Yep.
Sucks.
All right. You want to get into this plot summary?
Let's do it.
All right. Desperate Housewives pilot summary. We open to the idyllic suburban street of Wisteria Lane, the famous Wisteria Lane. I didn't know this show, but I knew about Wisteria Lane.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up in a neighborhood where every street was named after a flower, and it had lake in front of it, and there was a Lake Wisteria.
Ah.
We see the home of Mary Alice Young as she gardens in her front yard. She begins to narrate. My name is Mary Alice Young. When you read this morning's paper, you may come across an article about the unusual day I had last week. Normally, there's never anything newsworthy about my life, but all that changed last Thursday. Of course, everything seemed quite perfect, seemed quite normal at first. I made breakfast for my family, I completed my chores, I finished my projects, and I ran my errands. In truth, I spent the day as I spend every other day, quietly polishing the routine of my life until it gleamed with perfection. That's why it was so astonishing when I decided to go to my hallway closet and retrieve a revolver that had never been used. End quote. We then see Mary Alice put the gun to her head, and we hear off screen the gun go off. Her body is discovered by her neighbor, Martha Huber, who is known for meddling and being nosy. Oh yeah, so by the way, throughout this whole episode, this woman shows up everywhere.
Oh yeah.
But I'll get to that later. At Mary Alice's wake, being held at her home, family and fellow residents are in attendance. Lynette Scavo shows up with her 3 rowdy sons and newborn baby. Mary Alice narrates, talking about how Lynette was once climbing up the corporate ladder, but after discovering she was pregnant for the first time, her husband insisted that she be a stay-at-home mom. Lynette never gets a break and is constantly trying to control her rambunctious sons. She tries to bribe them in order to behave at the wake. Gabrielle Solis and her husband Carlos show up, and we are immediately shown that they are in an unloving marriage that revolves around money and image. Bree Vandekamp shows up with her husband and 2 children. Bree is the perfect, quote-unquote, perfect housewife. She does it all. Her own cooking, she sews her own clothes, does her own gardening, even reupholstering her own furniture, which they show clips of her doing all of these things. And it was actually kind of funny watching her reupholster, because that's an insane thing to do.
Oh, my mom used to reupholster furniture.
That's insane. I mean, hats off, but that's insane.
Oh, yeah.
Susan Meyer is the last to show up with her daughter, Julie. Susan was devastated when her husband left her a year ago and pretty much abandoned them. Susan has been wanting to meet a man who makes her happy. The 4 women sit together, and we discover that they, along with Mary Alice, are close friends and would often spend time together. We see flashbacks of them hanging out at Mary Alice's house, talking about their lives. At the wake, Susan meets Mike Delfino, the newest neighbor on Wisteria Lane. She is excited to hear that he is a bachelor and warns him not to eat the mac and cheese. She made it, so she knows it's terrible. So, Mike's the newest addition, and he's a hunk. He's a little hottie, and so all the single women in the area are probably gonna be wanting to hit that. Lynette is humiliated when her sons disobey her and jump into the Young's pool. Tired of threatening them, she decides to get in the pool and fetch them herself, and they leave the wake. That was probably my favorite scene, where she just gets in the pool. She's like, you know what? And then like the younger son, she was like, do you want me to come get you? And he just starts swimming towards her. I'm like, yeah, mom's not messing around. You could just tell. I just feel when you just have so many kids, I hats off to those parents.
Oh yeah,
that have 4 and a baby
under the age of like 7.
The next day, Susan admits to her daughter Julie that she is ready to meet someone. Julie takes it upon herself to go to Mike's house under the excuse of she kicked a ball in his backyard, and she gets a bunch of information about him. Later that day, Susan decides to take matter into her own hands and goes to Mike's house to ask him out. She realizes that there will be competition because fellow neighbor Edie Britt is after Mike as well. Edie is known for being somewhat of a man-eater and always getting what she wants. Fun fact, and I love this, Edie had made Mike sausage puttanesca, which is funny if you know the history of the dish, combined with Edie's reputation of frequently being with random men. Puttanesca is famous for being created by
prostitutes,
prostitutes,
horse sauce,
sex workers, and
sausage.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny when you kind of look at it that way. I didn't even realize the joke until I rewatched the pilot when I was writing the pilot summary. At Gabrielle's house, we see a fight between her and her husband. She doesn't want to go to a party, and Carlos insists she has to go. When Carlos leaves for work, we learn that Gabrielle is having an affair with their gardener, a teenager named John Rowland, which today that would not fly on a TV show.
Oh, no, yeah. That was pretty scandalous then.
Yeah, because he's like, I think they even say that he's like 16 or something like that, or 17.
Yeah, I don't remember.
He's a teenager. He's underaged. Wasn't. I mean, it's not that it wasn't a big deal back then. It just was on TV, and it was acceptable on TV at least. At Bree's house, they're having dinner, osobuco. I can never say that word. Right. Osobuco, with classical music playing in the background. Bree's son expresses that he is tired of her acting like she is running for mayor of Stepford, a little Stepford reference for my boo.
Yes.
And wants to be a normal family that has normal dinners. So it sounds like no one in this house is happy, and like it's very clear that they are a very typical family where they seem to be perfect,
idyllic, but they're not.
But they all hate each other.
Yeah.
So when Bree asks her husband, Rex, to chime in, to which he just says, pass the salt. So, like, her husband, he is checked out. He is, he is not interested at all in what she has to say about anything. It's just very clear that he could not care less. So Bree decides to take her son's advice and takes them to a normal restaurant with a salad bar and everything. I know. While the kids aren't at the table, Rex tells Bree flat out he wants a divorce because he can't live in this detergent commercial anymore, which I thought was kind of funny. Bree gets up to get their salads and says she got him honey mustard dressing because the ranch looks suspect. As Rex is eating his salad, he begins to act strange. He then realizes there were onions in the salad, something he is extremely allergic to, and blames Bree, who may or may not have done this on purpose out of anger. I don't know. I didn't catch that. She just kind of came back with their salads. And while they're at this restaurant, Martha Huber's there, and she sees them and says, hey, how's it going? Like, this woman is literally everywhere.
Everywhere.
The next day, Lynette is relieved that her husband is home, even if it's for a short time, so she can get a little break. Despite not having showered, being covered in baby food, and being exhausted, her husband still wants to bang. Because in a flashback, we learn that Lynette's husband is, like, mad horny all the time. Who plays her husband? We already said that. Doug Savant from Melrose Place. Husband to
Laura Layton,
who is the co-hostess of Still the Place. Rex is in the hospital after his allergic reaction. He accuses Bree of doing it on purpose, but she insists she was distracted by Miss Huber talking to her. Like I said earlier, this woman is everywhere. Rex tells her that he is tired of trying to be perfect all the time. He reminds Bree that she used to drink milk out of the carton, laughed when she would burn toast, but has turned into a plastic suburban housewife with pearls and a spatula who says things like, we owe the Hendersons a dinner. Bree leaves the room and goes into the bathroom, runs the faucet, and begins to sob. So obviously she's the person who no one can actually hear or see her have emotions. She has to do it all in private. Gabrielle and Carlos are going to the big fancy dinner when he notices the lawn hasn't even been mowed, and he plans to fire John. So John never really finishes doing his job because he's too busy banging the boss's wife. Gabrielle insists that the grass looks different because it's nighttime, and just wait and look at the lawn in the morning and it'll probably look normal. During the party, Gabrielle slips the waiter a 20 and instructs him to constantly give her husband cocktails to distract him, which, I'm sorry, it would cost me more than $20 to do that.
Right.
That's just my thing.
Yeah.
I paid attention to the amount of money. I'm like, you're slipping me a hundo, lady. Gabrielle rushes home and mows the lawn herself and returns to the party, realizing Carlos didn't even notice her absence. The next morning, Carlos sees the mowed lawn and, despite being confused, decides not to fire John. Which it's funny because I think I made this comment while we were watching the episode. I'm like, after you mow the lawn, you smell like the lawn.
Sweat? Yeah, it's
you
disgusting.
smell. It doesn't matter if you were doing it at night or not. Like, you're gonna smell like grass. And it was just really funny that I'm just like, Susan runs into, guess who, Mrs. Huber at the grocery store. I wonder if they ever like dig into her deal, Miss Huber.
I think they do. I don't remember it though. It's been a while, obviously, since I've watched this, but yeah, I'm sure they do.
And she informs Susan that Edie's son is staying the night at her house so Edie can entertain a male guest. Susan assumes the man is Mike. That night, Susan sneaks into Edie's house with the excuse of needing a cup of sugar. She brings the measuring cup and everything. She walks around the house and sees candles lit all over the living room with Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye playing, but it's clear the action has moved upstairs. Susan, which is just like, it's so corny because who does that in real life? I'm always just like, who lights 1,000 candles?
Right.
Susan sits on Edie's couch and has accepted the loss. Mike is upstairs with her having sex. Susan accidentally knocks over some candles, which catches fire on Edie's curtain, which spreads throughout the living room. In a panic, Susan runs out of the house, leaving behind the measuring cup she had brought for her cup of sugar. Later, the firefighters show up to put out the flames. Susan is outside with the other neighbors witnessing the spectacle. Suddenly, Mike shows up and asks what's going on. Susan is relieved to learn that it wasn't him inside the house with Edie. We learn that both Edie and her lover are fine but are at the hospital to treat smoke inhalation. Shortly after, we see Mike entering his house, calling someone on his phone. The man on the other end of the phone asks if Mike has found anything, to which Mike says no, but he's getting close. We then see Mike carrying a gun and holster, alluding that he's some type of undercover cop, law enforcement type. So Mike's got a little mystery to him. There's a little suspect to that too. What's his deal? Why is he there? Why did he move in? Who is he watching? Exactly. Who is he after? The next morning, the four housewives are at the Young's house carrying a few boxes. I'm assuming they're donating it. You never really find out like why they're exactly there. They make a toast to Mary Alice's memory. Just then an envelope letter slips out of one of the boxes. Gabrielle opens it and is shocked to see what it says. The letter reads, in all caps, in Sharpie, I know what you did. It makes me sick. I'm going to tell. Bree notices that the postmark date on the envelope is the same day Mary Alice died. Mary Alice narrates, I'm so sorry, girls. I never wanted you to be burdened by this. The four women look confused as the camera zooms out. We see everyone else on Wisteria Lane leading their picture-perfect suburban lives as the four women continue to stand there looking confused. End of episode.
End of episode.
Yeah, so I kind of want to know what's going on. I kind of want to continue.
Yeah, you really did.
It.
You were like,
yeah.
okay, now the note was like, okay.
Yeah.
So was there a reason?
Was she being blackmailed? Was there some like extortion? Was she blackmailing someone? Yeah. So I'm definitely interested. Yeah. So it's on Hulu. Prime. It's on Hulu, Prime, and Disney Plus. Oh, yeah, because Hulu and Disney Plus. Yeah. So they're on any of those. I definitely recommend. I know 180 episodes sounds like a lot, but I'm down. I mean, like, it seems it's interesting enough to me. I continue watching it.
Yeah.
And you never finished it, and apparently I've only seen the final season.
We need to meld those together and find out everything that has happened on Wisteria Lane.
All right, you think that wraps up this one?
Yeah.
All right, that wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at We Judge Pilot Pod. We're also on Facebook. You can leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. What you got?
All right, I have a few for Desperate Housewives. The House, The Cherry for Mark Cherry. I don't know if there's an actual wisteria, but there is the purple flower.
Yeah.
The Coffin, Cash, The Ball, The Pasta Bowl, Steak and Music, The Dinner Plate, The Salt, Salad, The Onion, The Hospital, Pearls, The Crying Emoji, Cocktails and Candles, The Fire, The Gun, The Phone, and The Envelope.
Nice.
All right, well, we are going to head out now, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.